What's up, everyone? Today we're going to talk about the Chapter 5 Zero build meta and how to counter the most powerful items and strategies that a lot of the player pool is currently taking advantage of. If you use the foundation of my loadout, you can counter pretty much everything that people are doing to grief your games while using some cheese of our own. This includes, but isn't limited to, riot shielders, sniper rifles, and people driving away and towards you in vehicles. Okay, so let's get into the loadout. There are three pieces that are all very important, and I value them in this order. Number one is going to be shockwaves. Shockwaves will, for the foreseeable future, be the best movement item in Fortnite. They simply have too much utility to not be considered the most valuable item. They're also the most fun to use. That's why I made them the channel logo. I really love shocks, but the main reason we need them this season is for pushing and closing the gap between opponents quickly. To gain a temporary high ground on a flat ground situation, or taking high ground away from an opponent who's, say, on a roof while you're on the ground beneath them. They can, of course, be used for repositioning and against opponents to get them away from cover, but that's not really what we're going to be discussing. Point is, utility of the shockwaves is extremely high. Next most important piece of the puzzle is going to be what I consider to be the most single underrated utility item in Fortnite, and that would be EMP Grenades. When the season started, they were nerfed from 70 shield damage down to 50. However, a later update has since buffed them up to a whopping 80 shield damage. In Chapter 4 Season 4, when they were introduced, those of us who used them were pretty happy with their 70 shield damage. If you hit 2, your opponent was left with 110 overall health, and that's an easy kill to clean up in most instances. When they were reduced to 50, they honestly became gold farming devices, as if you throw them against a vending machine, they will drop between 50 and 150 gold per EMP. Why this is, I have no idea. Bonus tip, if you don't have to wait for the vending machine to turn from red to blue before you can EMP it again. All you have to wait is about a second and a half. I always recommend using spare EMPs to gain extra gold. But since the damage buff, if you hit an opponent dead on, you can get them from the full 150 shield down with just 100 HP, which you can get with a single well-placed auto shotgun hit, or in my case, typically 2 to 3. Now, side note about EMP sometimes, I have noticed they do less than 80 damage. Sometimes you'll see like 30 or other numbers as well. I have no concrete evidence as to how they work at the moment. I'm guessing it could be where the opponent is within the explosion determines the amount of damage they take. So for example, if they're on the edge of the blast, they could take less damage than if you hit them dead on. I will post an update in a short or something when I figure out exactly how the damage is determined, but even with this inconsistency, I do believe EMPs are beyond valuable. Aside from damaging players directly and getting gold, their biggest usage is that you can use them to completely neutralize a vehicle. People like to drive straight at you in this game or use cars to get away. Even if someone is going full speed, if you can get in position with a very well placed EMP, you can absolutely ruin their game. As you watch the background footage of this video, notice how many people get absolutely destroyed because they have a false sense of security around their vehicle. They stay close to it as a means of cover and a getaway option. However, when you're up against EMPs, a vehicle will only enhance the range in which you can be hit from, and most importantly, if you are in a vehicle that's hit by an EMP, you still take shield damage. This is usually the worst case scenario for someone who isn't expecting their ride to be disabled and almost always leads to a death, as you can just shoot them directly through any of the windows. The best play here is to get out and shockwave away, but I've even killed people who go for this option, as you really do have to have an immediate reaction, and most people aren't ready for this exact situation. Tying this entire strategy together is the newest addition to Fortnite, the flow items. Buried and the newly added Fizz are two extremely welcome additions to the loot pool. Whenever soaring sprints was available last season, I always went for it, as that was the only way to consistently acquire the low gravity effect. The biggest issue I have with it, however, is that it required a sprint jump to activate. With these new items, however, we can activate it on a regular jump as well, which simply gives us more ways to utilize the item. I think I was the only person using flow berries when they only heal for 10, but my main strategy was to hold them as my primary heal and backup movement, and to simply heal from the myriad of other resources on the map, be it slurp barrels, mending machines, or heals that you get from other players, not to mention the countless ground loot and chests. When the berries were buffed to 15 shield per, it was an even more obvious choice for me. I know most people carry big pots, but that's not my thing. I'm going for the most utility possible. To top all this off, we now have the new flow berry Fizz, which is just a better version of a full 6 stack of berries. To break it down, 6 flow berries gives you a 90 total shield, 15 at a time, and 6 instances of 5-second low gravity effect. Overall, this is a very respectable amount of utility, and I was very happy to run it when it was the only option. But now with the Fizz, it's just outclassing the berries in every way. First and foremost, it's one complete item. Berries come in stacks of 2, and if you aren't in a location where on the map where they grow naturally, they can be very scarce at times. Second is the fact that you get 10 more total health from the Fizz, giving you a full 100. However, the most important part is where it behaves like a med mist in the aspect that you can click it, so to speak. It heals 5 shields per tick, and you can use it 20 times, gaining the 5-second low gravity effect every time, meaning your total low gravity usage goes from 30 seconds with a stack of 6 to an insane 100 seconds with a full Flowberry Fizz. Over a full minute and a half of movement makes this heal item go from a decent secondary movement option to a great one. Now, each of these 3 items are awesome on their own. However, it's when you combine them that their synergy really begins to show. To put it straight, Flowberry Shockwave EMP is an insane combo that can be used a ton of ways. Once again, if you've been watching the background footage, you have plenty of examples of what I mean by this. The classic is the Shockwave EMP onto somebody. Say you and someone else are relatively close, you Shockwave up, take a very high arc, and throw 2 EMPs down at them. After the second, you switch to your close range option. This is the single easiest way to counter someone with a frenzy auto shotgun, because even though it's a busted weapon, it can't make up for the deficit of having even one solid EMP land on you. Going into a close range fight with 170 HP versus someone with a full 250 really is a massive disadvantage. And if you get them with both and it's 100 versus 250, it's a wrap at that point. Let's take another utility example that I found myself using. Say I get into a really sticky situation and I just want to get out of there. If you take a Flowberry or take the Fizz one time before using a Shockwave, you will go about 2 to 3 times further than if you didn't grant yourself the low gravity effect. To me, this effectively increases the value of each Shockwave by giving it an additional boost in utility. If getting that distance would have normally required 2 to 3 Shockwaves, carrying Flowberries makes me feel like I have 10 to 15 shocks instead of just 6. On this same type of play, just in the other direction, you can use this exact combo for some hyper offense. Say someone is sniping at you, or they have high ground and you really need to cover a large amount of distance quickly. With some practice, you can easily make up the ground between you with a Flowberry Shockwave combo, land on them with EMPs, and finish with your close range option. The hardest part of this is controlling the direction you go, shocking with the low gravity. It is a different muscle memory to a traditional Shockwave sprint jump. Aim yourself and just kind of go. You are a lot easier to misfire and go in a direction that you don't want. It just takes practice though, so I recommend trying it a lot. Okay, so let's talk about everyone's favorite weapon to fight against, the ballistic / riot shield, depending on what you call it. This thing can be very annoying, as to break the stance with just bullets feels very janky at times. There's a lot of advice going around on how to do that, and we're not going to talk about any of that here. Instead, we're going to go over what to do if someone pulls up with a riot shield, and that's very simple. You want to EMP them twice and break their camera to finish them with a close range option. This will require some kind of movement, slide, jump, mantle, whatever it is depending on the terrain, and getting an angle where the shield doesn't protect them. Shielded opponents are most protected when you are challenging them head on with a bit of distance between you and them. Once you close that gap and take the distance away, you can jump and dance around them to find your shots. It's not the most ideal way to take them out, but it's our best bet with the way that our setup plays. Now, very important that we talk about the other 2 inventory slots that will be holding our weapons. Notice we only have 2, and I haven't specifically said which guns we'll be using with this loadout, and that's because it's going to be up to you. My personal recommendation when starting out would be to go with the Auto Frenzy shotgun, highest rarity you can find, and if you don't go for the mythic, mod it with a quick reload and laser sight. Those are the only 2 mods that matter at the time of this recording. Last gun can be literally any ranged option you feel comfortable with. For most people, I think their best choice would be a Striker AR with a red dot or the 1.3x hollow scope on it. However, I also think that the Nemesis is a hugely slept on weapon that does really good damage as long as you don't challenge a sniper with it. It will do fine in just most situations. I've won a lot of games this season with a purple Nemesis holding the 1.3x hollow scope because I very often go for the forecast tower, and if I haven't found a scoped arrow at that point, I'll just pick up the one that the boss drops until I can find a decent striker with a scope. Honestly, just as an aside, never challenge a sniper in an ADS gunfight where you guys are just shooting back and forth at each other from distance. If you were going to do that, then there's no point in running this setup that can close the gap on them so quickly. If I can't get my hands on any AR in the game, it would have to be Nisha's Striker. Then, if I can't, I'll mod one to get one as close as I can to hers. Nemesis is fine if there's nothing else around. Don't take the Enforcer. It's honestly a pretty bad gun at the moment. I would legit take a Ranger pistol before I took the Enforcer. Ranger with a drum mag and 1.3x hollow actually feels pretty nice and does very respectable damage too with a nice rate of fire. Okay, so while this loadout is anti-sniper, let's talk about how to fit one into our kit if you do want to play with the best gun in the game. Personally, I've lost interest in running the Reaper every game as it's gotten very boring using a gun that I don't feel like takes a whole lot of skill, but nevertheless, I honestly think the sniper can go with either your shotgun or your AR slot. Let me explain. If I have Nisha's Striker or one that's modded similarly, I don't really need a shotgun for my close range fight because I also carry EMPs, and 9 times out of 10 when my opponent and I get into a close range fight, I've taken their shield away in one way, shape, or form. It's also the current meta where everyone is expecting you to carry an auto frenzy, so if you don't, and then when you do get into a close range situation, you can bait the opponent into maybe a slightly more mid-range fight by backing up or sliding away, and you can destroy some people with a striker for your only close range option. I've done this many times already. I think you could easily make a case as well for running shoddy sniper and just foregoing the AR entirely. A single sniper shot can open up an opponent to a shockwave auto shotgun cleanup, squeeze in an EMP before you land, and it truly can be an easy kill. And that's the main benefit of having these 3 utility items as your foundation, as they have a greater function than the sum of their parts, while simultaneously making every gun you you hold better because of your added movement and damage, all because they work together and off each other so very well. But yeah, this is the general game plan, friends. Try it out and come back here and let me know what you think. I was getting extremely bored playing with just the Reaper sniper and finding other players who had a sniper, and then it was just getting into these long-range gunfights back and forth that took a long time, and they felt like more luck of who was going to hit the headshot first anyway. You have 50 shots, you shoot 10 shots at someone, and it just feels like we're kind of flipping a coin at that point. So that's why I developed this counter meta loadout, and I've been having an absolute blast with it ever since. I hope you enjoyed it too. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like and share with your friends if you got this far. Love you all, and we'll see you on the next one.